Okay, and we are live. So, how is everybody doing today?
Doing
pretty
very,
good.
very good.
Doing
Running
pretty good.
on
Fantastic.
low sleep,
Pretty
lots
well.
of writing.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, it looks like you're still writing.
No, not.
Yeah. Well, just getting last minute notes for the show here.
Couple last minute things, but
There you go.
I've had gaming on the mind all week, so perfect place.
Well, I mean, you got what 300 people in a Discord server that kind of depend
Wait,
on
give me a
you
second.
constantly doing
That
stuff.
that weird reverb is me. Hang on a second.
Oh, I don't hear a reverb. Does anybody else?
I don't hear
Okay.
it either.
There we
Just
go.
Jade? Okay.
Sorry, I had my YouTube channel running in another window,
Oh.
so I can see the chat there, and there's
Yeah.
a 15-second delay, so I was getting this really
Yeah.
8 people
Yeah,
talking
like
at once.
Oh, nice. It's fantastic. Yeah, no, that happens. Yeah, you got to pause it or mute it or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. So today, we're going to be talking about running convention games versus running a home game. That's the plan anyway. We'll see how far that goes. But yeah, it's been a while since I've run at a convention. So because I've been running a convention. So generally I go to conventions to play because I'm like the forever DM.
Yeah.
And I enjoy that. I mean, that's, I would rather run than play.
But maybe the thing to ask you then would be, what are things that you notice that are different about convention games compared to the games that you're running?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. I mean, my games are, my games specifically are usually chaotic and run with, nothing but a pile of scribbles written down at home. Hopefully none of my players are watching, but, that's how I only use a GM screen so that they can't see that there's nothing behind it. That's
I actually, and I know it's these days it's kind of not cool in general overall, but I swear by GM screens. I always use, and it's not so that I can hide my dice rolls from my players or anything like that.
Yeah.
I value the rules reference that GM screen gives me right there.
Sure.
And if I'm doing
Yeah.
something like if we're having a miniatures based combat, like in the new Conan game, I'll take the GM screen down so that we can all get in there and see and do what we're doing.
Sure.
But I swear by having that thing in front of me. I love it. So,
Yeah. I use one on and off. Like I've been running a lot of Shadow Dark at home, and the GM screen, the first GM screen for that isn't really that great. The newer one now that they came out with is a lot better. But she kind of didn't have a lot of she had name generation and things like that took up a whole panel that you really didn't need.
Yeah.
And so, so that's, that's okay for some people, I guess. But
So
It's
it
power
sounded
move for
like
me.
though you were getting at something different you saw at a convention.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I went off on a complete.
oh
tangent.
yeah, no, we went. I don't know. I'm not sure where I was going. What was I saying? Yeah, I don't know. Games are different. Oh yeah, usually a convention game is usually more planned out, right? Like if I'm going to run at a convention or anywhere in public at a game store or anything like that, I generally have a plan or at least a module, or if it's not a module, it's something that I've written. There's there's generally a map and things that I can look at and run it like that. Although I have run off the cuff, but generally you see at a convention, people will say, "Oh, I'm going to run this thing," because I think you kind of have to advertise that. I don't think you could just say, "Hey, I'm just going to run a game and we're just going to roll dice and whatever happens." You know what I mean? Nobody's going to sign up for that.
Right.
So you got to say, "Hey, I'm going to run this specific rule set and I'm going to run this adventure," even if it's something that you just, made up or whatever. I think it has to have a name to put on the tin, so I think that's kind of important.
So more focused or more structured, you would say, compared to a home game.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think you kind of have to be, right? I think if you you get people to the table by saying, okay, we're gonna go and like right just for like to take Matt's game, right? Like, hey, we're gonna get together, we're gonna go kill Dracula on a spaceship. Like now you have like a goal, and like the group kind of knows, like, oh, okay, we're on a spaceship, and there's gonna be vampires, and we're gonna try and kill them. And so you're gonna have like the same goal. Whereas in my home game, like it's like, hey, what do you guys want to do? Where do you guys want to go? You guys want to go over here? You go over there, and then the players can talk ahead of time and decide. And I mean, you can't do that in a convention game because you got 3 hours, 4 hours, and you don't want to spend the first 45 minutes to an hour where they're just trying to oh, let's go buy some arrows and then let's go over here and let's what I mean. You want to start a convention game with like,
Right.
Hey, not like, hey, we're going to kill the vampire in space. Oh, let's go to the docking station and book a ship. Like, no, you landed, you're there somehow, you crashed, you landed there, you're there, there's undead, go. Like that's. I mean, you really got to, That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think that we talked about last week last stream, we talked about railroading and like the validity of railroading as a concept, and I think that by their nature, if you consider railroading to be a linear adventure from point A to point B to point C, con games have to be more that way. I think by their very
Sure.
nature, you have to have a straight path, and I think that players are much more willing to jump on the plot train at a con game than they are at a home game.
Sure.
Like you were saying, home games. My notes for home games usually tend to be a list of bullet points of this is what's going to happen if the players don't get involved, and we just go from there and see what happens. At a con game, you got to have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4. You got to know where your combats are going to be, because, like you said, you have and Matt is about to tell me I'm wrong because that's not the way he runs it. I can see it in his face. But Matt, you're a very special person. I think for most of us at con games, we have that 3 or 4 hour slot, and we have to know how to get from point A to point B in that 3 to 4 hours. And I think your players generally expect that in a con game a lot more.
Yeah, I think you can go different directions, but I mean the beginning and the end, I think, are usually sort of fixed.
Yeah.
Matt again is going to tell me I'm wrong too, but
I got to be honest. I have never planned an ending, so I don't know necessarily how to do that. But whenever,
now wait a second. Let me just ask you a question. For example, your Dracula in space adventure. The end game is to face down Dracula and kill him, right?
If they get there, I mean,
so you have an ending planned.
Well,
the thing is, it's always if they get there. You could have a TPK at any given time in any game.
Well, I never go in with the idea that Dracula is going to be what they're kicking down doors to go find. So I just have Dracula. He's on the ship and he's doing his thing, completely unconcerned with the fact that the players are there, because he's got bigger goals and they're weak little things that have shown up. But Dracula in space is a bit of an exception in the things that I normally run, because it is so on the nose with like and that was on purpose. It's like, this is Dracula on a spaceship. Need I say more? Kind of. But usually at con games, I am a bit more structured in that I'm usually running dungeons. So, and by that, the only thing I plan is I plan to say at the beginning of the game, I don't care what else you thought you were doing. Your characters are here to go do a dungeon because they want money or something. Otherwise, whatever. And then I just run said dungeon. It's usually something I've written, but I've run a few dungeons that I haven't made, of course, but not I haven't run one at a convention that I didn't write yet.
So basically, you just run the dungeon until you run out of time, and then you say, "Hey, thanks. There's no ending. Just Thanks for
Pretty
popping in.
Yep, pretty much every time. I've had one group. The thing is, I've never had a group that didn't either get out of the dungeon or all die or something like that before the end of a convention, just because of it's just how it's happened to roll up. Like in Roger's game of Dracula in Space, they all died, and then
we won. We won and died in the process.
They blew the whole thing up. Like Dracula was dead, but so were they. But in the other game I ran at CMYCon, it was the Dungeon of the Fell Lord. That's a 13 level mega dungeon that I was running. And I just said, here's the front door, figure out what you're doing. The only part of it that I did that was different for the convention for me was telling them, you're going in the dungeon. Like I'm not doing wilderness stuff. I brought my dungeon to run the dungeon.
Well, and you brought a dungeon. You're not, from what it sounds like, you're not procedurally generating the layout, for example. It sounds like you have a map.
I haven't procedurally generated at a convention before, but I do that also because I have random tables for generations, but I just haven't had the pleasure of doing that at a convention.
Yeah, I asked because I know you do that at home.
Yes.
And so there was perhaps a little more structure in that regard as well.
Yeah.
Which is a good idea because you don't know how tired you're going to be when you're running that game.
Well,
and even if you'd be sharp enough with procedural generation to remember everything normally, you might have had 4 hours of sleep, or your hotel room might have had no air conditioning or whatever.
Well, the other thing I do, though, with the exception of Dracula in Space, because that one is kind of like, it's one of those dungeons that I just, in my head, it resets itself somehow. It's caught in a time loop, so I keep running the same thing again and again. But my other dungeons I run them in campaign when I go to conventions. So like when I ran Dungeon of the Fell Lord and those players went and broke into the aquarium level of the adventure, that happened. Like when players went into my home game, the floor was wet outside where they broke into it. And then the dead bodies were still there from the people that died at the convention. But there is more structure to con game because I am saying you're doing this thing, like you're going in the dungeon at least. But I've heard people talk about doing acts in like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 in games in general. I have never been able to. Every time I sit and I try and think about how I would do that, I think I just remember how off the rails everything gets at my home tables. So when I'm at the convention, that's why I've only ever ran dungeons at conventions. There is some, like, that they're not going to, how do I say it, like start wilderness exploring to the other side of the map to something you haven't that you don't have right in front of you. I have the dungeon.
Well, yeah, but that's something I was saying too, though. I think, at least in my experience, at conventions, players are much less likely to do that. At conventions, your players understand that they're there to sample this game and they're there to take in a specific linear point A to B to C story. And they are much more willing to jump on that plot train and do, and go with it. They're not, unless you get a real asshole at your table, which does happen, they're not going to try to derail your game. We're using all kinds of railroad terminology.
It's Bo Paints Minis says railroad means linear. I don't take the same meaning. I don't know. To me, they're the same. I think anything that's, I mean, I guess you can have a linear adventure that isn't necessarily a railroad, but I mean, if it's linear and it only goes one direction, one way, I mean, that is
right. That's where the term comes from. Now,
yeah.
Railroad carries a connotation of robbing players of their agency.
Yeah.
But I would argue that at a con game, to an extent, that has to happen, unless you run like
sure.
that, which I envy you. And I honestly, Matt, I think you're an exception to the rule in the way you do that. But I think that at con games, there is a bit of there's a bit less agency for the players because they know that they are jumping in for a specific A to B to C story. Whereas at a home game, they expect to be able to go off the rails a little bit more and, pursue their research and pursue their characters' personal goals and, this, that, and the other thing.
And, I think for me, I mean, you guys have each played with me at a convention. So for me, the scenario is set, but the outcome is not. And because of the nature of the scenario, depending on the game that we're playing, it may be that there is a fairly linear structure in terms of, like, in a dungeon, if there's only one path through a given section, that's functionally linear. Or if through a spaceship, there's only one usable corridor. Whereas if there is kind of somewhat free movement, I may not know what the end encounter is because it will be kind of dictated by what the players do, assuming they survive up to that point. Yeah. So I think I'm a little bit between both of your styles, but overall, I have everything prepped and it's simply reacting to what the players are doing,
right.
Rather than trying to lead them towards a particular outcome.
And I also want to clarify, when I talk about like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, Act 4, that's not really it's not scripted in the way you might think. Like Act 1 is the introduction to the story, the introduction of the problem. Act 2 is a complication of some sort that the players have to resolve in some way, however they choose to do it. Act 3 then is the climax of the adventure where they get to whatever the end game might be, whether it's something that I had planned out or whether their path takes them a different way. And then Act 4 is the denouement where they, have hopefully survived it. So those terms about being acts are general story structured terms, but it's not a rigid, limited.
It's not used in the same way you would if you were like writing it. Okay.
Right.
See what if you were showing up to my table at the convention, I would have had the maps on the table, which this is one of the ones we were running. And
you could get through that in 3 hours.
Well,
yeah, easy. Easy.
But I'd have the map on the table, and then I have the map of the town on the table, and I have a printed out piece of equipment and some pre-made characters, and I go, here's the basic idea. There's this deadly dungeon. Here's the rumor you've heard about it. You're all here to make money. I'll be back in 15 minutes once you guys buy equipment, and then you're going to tell me what you're going to do within this area, because that's all I brought with me. And when we played, they went into the dungeon, randomly walked around. They actually got further than most of my home players did because they beelined it across the dungeon. Opened up a door to this thing with it was like its golden statue with this gemstone in his head, and they were like, "Oh, that's awesome! Let's go touch it." Shot him with a laser beam. Somebody turned into radioactive goo, and then they ran out of the dungeon back to the town, realizing they didn't buy the right equipment, and started. They said, "Can we take 5 so we can all get better stuff?" And they got some henchmen and hirelings. Then they went back in with like 10 people and fared a little bit better. And then about 30 minutes before the game was over, the time was over, I said, "You guys have about 30 minutes. If y'all keep going, I'm going to roll a die to see if your characters survived after this, because you're all going on to other games. Or y'all could try getting out of the dungeon right now, whatever y'all are doing." And they decided to get out of the dungeon, and then they made it back. And then I said, all of this is in campaign, so if anybody wants to join later, y'all can bring those to the next time I run it online or wherever it is. So that's like the level of structure. And now as far as like my notes at the table, the only notes I really have at the table is just this in front of me, and then my little type down what's in each room. And then beyond that, if they were to say leave the map or start to head away from the map, that's at a con game. I'd be like, "You guys signed up for Dungeon of the Fell Lord, turn around," mainly just because the other people at the table might be signing up because they wanted to view what was going to be the future product. Is like, well, we're going to keep it at least within the map of the town for the con game.
And I think in that sense, that's kind of what we're all talking about when we say con games are more structured and a little more rigid. Like you are limited in some ways, and your players accept that at con games in a way that they don't at home.
Yeah.
I had an Amazing Adventures game that I ran at Page this year, which Raj was not the one that you were in. It was a Wild West game where the players were playing the Lincoln County Regulators and Pat Garrett stuck in a town of zombies. Okay. And the idea was that they found this one young girl who was still alive in the town, and she was begging them to help her find her mother. And it was set up so that it was Ravenloft-ish. There was this red mist surrounding the town that stopped them from being able to leave the town. Because in a lot of cases, your player's just going to go, this is above our pay grade. See ya.
Yeah.
And at con games, you set up barriers like that. At a home game, remove the barrier. And if your players decide to be, if your players decide their characters are that big of an asshole that they're going to leave this little girl alone, then so be it, But at a con game, it's perfectly acceptable to do that. You're trapped in this town, and the only way out is to rescue, this little girl's mother.
Yeah.
I had a question for y'all too, in pertaining to con games, which is because I know last time we talked about like GM responsibility for games. Do you feel at a con game, is it your responsibility to make sure somebody had fun? Because I know last time some of us were like, well, it's player responsibility. But at a convention game where you've got people signing up and possibly coming to view your product, do you feel like you have oh, I better make sure that this is good for them kind of?
Yeah, I mean, if it's your product, right? And I mean, that's something that you guys have different than me. Like, I don't have a product yet, spoilers, but I don't have a product that I'm pushing, so I'm not like, I'm just running a game, right? So people would show up and game with me because they want to play, Shadow Dark or whatever the system is, and whatever the game or the dungeon or whatever I'm running. I think for you guys, most of the people that show up, I mean, part of it is probably, hey, I want to try this game out, but some of it is like, I want to play with the guy that made it, like, I mean, I wouldn't like going to Page, like if Jason's games were full, I would not have played Amazing Adventures. Like, I wouldn't have played if somebody else was running it, because I don't care. Like, you know what I mean? Not that I don't care, but it's just like, I wanted to play this guy, in, Jason's game. Because I mean, because you're a great GM and it's your game. I want to, you know what I mean. Obviously, I want the guy that ran it. Same thing with with Todd, right? Like, I mean, I wanted to play, like he kind of pushed me into it, right? But I'm
Yes.
glad he did. But like, if Todd was like, oh, this random guy over here is running, Horde Wars, you should play it. I mean, like, whatever. I mean, so part of it was because, hey, I want to play with him. So I think this is like a different experience between, me and you guys there, doing that, because people want to play with you guys. So I think there's more on you guys to make sure that everybody has fun, because, you're trying to like sell a product and a whole, not just sell a product, but a whole thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, well, I'm sorry, Todd, go ahead. You were.
I mostly try to, I mean, I want to have fun too, right? We're playing a game. But my goal is not like to have them necessarily succeed. I want them to experience the game. And if that means that they all die horribly, that's okay.
Yeah.
It's not the ideal outcome. And as much as possible, I will try to help them understand the rules so that it isn't because they failed to understand they had other options. Right. But if it's, things are going badly, we're low on hit points, and we're just going to charge and try to kill this bad guy anyway, and it doesn't go well, I'm not going to pull punches. It's one of the reasons I don't use a screen, and in particular at convention games, so that the players can see that I'm not holding back. I'll even show them where the stat blocks are that they're fighting.
Yeah.
And I do that very deliberately And I found that for most players, it actually makes it more exciting for them, in particular at a convention game, because they're like, oh no, he'll kill us.
Well, see, that's a good point about, if they're coming here to experience the game. That's why Roger, you experienced this whenever you were playing in Dracula in Space. I gave all the spellcasters every spell in the book and printed out a little sheet.
Yeah.
The only concession I made was you don't get the spell description, but most of them are pretty on the nose. Like, what Black Hole's going to do, at least to a degree. But that way, there's not this like, oh, okay, whatever level character you are, you only get to experience those couple spells that they might have or whatever. It's like, they might want to actually see what the bigger spells in the game look like, or the other spells that they might not have thought of look like in the game mechanically. And then that's, so giving them all the spells, giving all the clerics the spells, and then stuff like I also don't bring my GM screen to conventions and roll out in the open for everybody. But I also have like, they could look over and see my dungeon map. Granted, mine's a little hard to read, but they get to see that there's actually something that they're dealing with here, rather than pulling punches or fiating certain things.
For me, when a game doesn't go well at a con, I feel terrible. I ran 2 games at CNY Con. I ran a night shift game and a 13 parsecs game. And I think I told you guys all that the night shift game went great. It went really well. It was super fun. Everybody had a good time. And I was so off my game as GM at the 13 parsecs game that I felt like I just trashed the whole thing. I'm forgetting my rules. I'm forgetting how things work. I'm stumbling over words and descriptions. Now, at the end of the game, 2 guys did tell me that they liked the game enough that it was probably going to replace Traveler for them. So I guess it didn't go as bad as I thought it did. But
Yeah.
I came out of that game feeling awful because I felt like I didn't do my job.
It always goes worse for the GM, like because you're the one that's like you hyper focus on every little mistake that you make,
Mhm.
and like the players like don't even notice half of them, right?
Especially if they don't know
invested
the
in game.
system. You know every
Right.
mistake you make for the rules, but your
Right.
players don't. They don't have any idea that they might just think that your game sucks.
Yeah.
Or they might not notice at all, and they might be having a grand old time, and you
Yeah.
just are second guessing yourself, which I think is what happened with me. But as far as the GM thing goes, like I get where you guys are coming from, but I always pull out GM screens at a con, and again, it's not to hide from the players; it's so that the players can see the GM screen.
Yeah.
The product too, and the artwork on the outside of the GM screens can be very evocative and really help to get people in the mood of the game. So
Griff says I'm a bad GM. Was promoting Lost Dungeons of Tinesburg, got a lot of TPKs. Players always seem to choose it, but that's like the thing too, right? Like the Lost Dungeon of Tinesburg is an old school dungeon, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the old school dungeons, right?
Like
And
the
I think that's what's meant for, right? Like, and it's and I think even Matt was saying this in the chat, but like that's like the same kind of style that he runs. It's this big dungeon. You go in, and it's like you're not expected to survive it, really, because it's an old school dungeon crawl, and
Right.
so like you might get a lot of TPKs, but I think that there's some fun in that, Like I mean, Dracula in Space. What did we? An hour and a half, 2 hours. I mean, we were.
It was about 2 hours, and then I mean that's the way I run my dungeons too, is old school style.
And it was a good time, and we TPK'd. We also won. I mean, so that helps. But I mean, but it was. I mean, it was ridiculous the way that. You know what I mean? So I think there's something to be said about TPKs and still having fun.
And there are some games where players almost accept it. Like if you're running a horror game, if you're running Aliens, or if you're running Call of Cthulhu or another horror game, a lot of times your players will be disappointed if you don't TPK them by the end of it.
Right.
And that's also different between con games and home games. Because at home games, unless you're expressly doing a one-shot like the Alien Cinematic Adventures, your players expect to go on and build their characters. And, even in a Call of Cthulhu game, they expect that there's going to be a slow slide into madness, but they expect to get a number of stories in and become experienced investigators before that happened. At a con, it's like, oh yeah, baby,
Right.
I'm insane.
Right. You jump to the end. Yeah.
And players know this and are often more bold as a result
Yes.
with their characters.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Well,
So-
yeah, because if you had to roll up a new character every week, you know what I mean? Like that gets
Right.
old after a little while. So you got to start saying, okay, I'm going to be careful because I actually want to see somebody hit level 2 here.
Right.
You know?
So as a GM at a con game, you kind of have to, and I'm going to throw this out to you guys then to see what you guys think about it. You kind of have to decide what kind of game you want to run. Like, do you want to run for the specific game that you're demonstrating? Do you want to run a meat grinder, or do you want your characters to experience being over-the-top heroes? Or because when I run Night Shift versus Amazing Adventures versus 13 Parsecs versus Wasted Lands, it's a different experience for each one. If you're in Amazing Adventures, the game is called Amazing Adventures, for Christ's sakes. I mean, I expect you to do over-the-top heroics and do great things,
Yeah.
Night Shift can vary. If I'm running a Buffy the Vampire Slayer type game, there's going to be horror elements, but you're expected to beat them. Whereas if I'm running a Lovecraftian horror game, again, it's going to be madness and terror and horror the whole way. So how do you guys juggle that in your games at cons?
Well, considering I'm going to expand this to also like running stuff at a local game store in a way, because my only experience running at conventions has been running dungeons. So, but running at the local game stores and such, there is a bit, depending on the game we're running, there's a different tone, but that's usually worked out in basically them knowing what they're signing up for or they're showing up to do. So
Right.
like you said, if they're showing up to do Lovecraftian, they're going to act a certain way versus if they show up to play, hey dude, we're doing Red Nails or something, they're going to show up and they're going to play a certain way there. I think, you do kind of get those people though that don't really know what they signed up for.
Oh yeah.
To the table.
Sure.
That happens quite a bit. I've had a few, but usually they eventually catch on. They're like, "Oh, this is kind of what we're doing here." But I know that the next time at CNYCon, I'm bringing just the OD&D books or maybe Holmes Basic or something and doing outdoor survival, and that's going to be kind of the same routine for me. It's just now it's on the outdoor survival map, and
It's a hex crawl. Yeah.
well, yeah, and then we're just going to procedurally generate it as we go along. We're going to roll dice and see. But people are going to know that's what they're signing up to do in the description. It's going to be like, I'm going to have the OD&D books in front of me. I will have 0 notes done, and we're just going to hop in and we're going to see what's out there in the map and stuff like that.
Right.
But I guarantee if I said, hey, we're going to run an epic Conan-style adventure, and we're going to have some horror and intrigue and stuff, and I did the exact same thing where all I did was show up with outdoor survival and nothing else and no anything, I bet you some people would be disappointed.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, you definitely have to have, and I think it kind of goes like what I was saying earlier, right? Like you can't just say, hey, we're going to do this thing. Like you got to have it spelled out, on the tin that says this game within this is the thing that we're doing, Chubby points out his lower back sore from sitting in uncomfortable chairs. That's another thing. Home games generally have more comfortable chairs. I'll say
They
that.
do. But
yes, that's
one of
true.
the things you do though is you lean into what the game is about. So if I'm running Horde Wars, you're probably going to fight over the course of an adventure something like 50 to 200 opponents. It's the name. It's in the name of
Yeah.
the game.
You
Now, it's
have
not
to,
that
right?
Every
Yeah.
adventure will be that way. But if I'm prepping something for a convention, yeah, that's definitely.
Oh yeah, yeah. If I sat down in your game to play Horde Wars, and there's 3 guys,
yeah.
I'm like, wait, what?
Where's the horde?
Where's the rest
Yeah.
of them? Yeah,
Yeah. And the same is true if you're running horror. The same is true, for dropship. It's the game is set up so that you can play like guys who are fighter pilots or commanding starships and engaging in naval combat. But that's not the
Sure.
name. The
Right.
name is really about Marines landing and fighting things.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Or just turning invisible and avoiding combat for most of the game while he stays away from the rest of the group.
Leaping over a rail to get away from tons of
Yeah.
bad guys and getting stuck in the lower levels until you can
Well,
snipe your way out, and then you have to fucking do everything.
Yeah.
Well, I
So-
know too.
We are referencing the game that we all played in Todd's at CNYCon for those
Yeah.
who are completely confused about what we're saying.
It was, well, at least the one I played in was chaotic and fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of dead aliens. But one of the things too is like, how do you, with the limited time at a convention game, when you start off, how much information are y'all giving them ahead of time before they're hopping into all this? Like if you're running, say, it might be good if we pick like Night Shift, for example, versus another one of your games. Like how much do they know about what they're signing up for? I know what Todd's going to say because I played in it, but
I mean, if you look at my descriptions, I give basically the back of a novel, the back cover of a novel description of what the adventure is going to be. And then when we sit down at the table, if it's in a specific setting, like in Night Shift, I almost always run in my City of the Twilight Queen setting. And I give the players just enough information to understand what's going on in the setting at large without a huge info dump. So your players have fallen through the cracks in time and space, and you're in the city, which is, your characters don't know this, but is ruled by the Fae, the Seelie and Unseelie court, and everything in the city is equidistant from everywhere else. It's always nighttime, but for whatever reason, your players, while they may be cognizant of it, or your characters never question it. And that's pretty much it. That's all you need to know to really start going in the City of the Twilight Queen. And then I launch into the adventure from there. And most of my adventures for Night Shift could be transplanted into whatever setting you want. It's just having that the City of the Twilight Queen tropes makes it easier for me as a GM. So basically, the short and simple answer to all that is I give them exactly as much as they need to understand what's going on around them without boring them to death by reading the Bible of my campaign setting.
Yeah, I think Griff nailed it here. I tend to set it up without planning for how the players will solve the problem. Yeah, I think that's basically what you do is you have, the blurb of, hey, this is kind of who you are, this is where you're going, this is the goal, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, we're going into this castle to kill the vampire. You're headed to this thing. Maybe name some things and all that, but I think that's you got to kind of.
I need that on a t-shirt. Problem maker, not solver. All right.
Yeah.
But no, I would say that's what we're talking about when we say that these games are more linear. It's not that the players literally only have one specific road to take.
Yeah.
But there's definitely an obvious path, usually, of how to get to the objective. Again, though, now where Matt's talking about, you just run a dungeon crawl where players are exploring until the time runs out, and that's a completely different thing altogether.
Yeah.
But I think in general, there's going to be an obvious path from point A to point B to point C, but there's also room for players to take other ways to get there. Sure, maybe climbing up the fire escape is the easiest way to get to the roof, but my players in my Night Shift game spent a fate point to go up to the roof of the next building and leap across over onto the roof to surprise the bad guys all at once.
Yeah.
That's their choice. That's how they chose to do that.
Cool.
They came up with plans to create diversions and draw the bad guys out that weren't, obviously planned in the adventures. So yeah, there's always room for players to get creative and do something you didn't expect. But I just think con games are, again, where in a home game I might have really sketchy notes. In a con game, I'm going to account for a lot more things to try to keep the story moving forward.
One of the other big differences that I would say is probably you guys experience too, is that Home games, people tend to become friends over time, even if they weren't originally. And so you will tend to have like, I don't know, half an hour, 20 minutes of arrival time leading up to the game time where people are coming in and wanting to talk to each other kind of about their daily lives and what's going on and hanging out. At a convention game, that is not typical.
Right.
You'll get some people who maybe want to talk about the game or the adventure or something like that, but not there won't tend to be a lot of socializing in general at the table
Yeah.
during or leading up to gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a very different vibe that way. I actually have a question to throw out to you guys because this happens to everybody at their con games, and it rarely happens in home games where you know everybody that you're playing with. How do you guys handle it if you have that one player at your con table who is extremely shy and doesn't want to be involved, and then starts to feel left out because they're not being involved, or who picks a character that they think looks cool at the beginning, and then something about the character doesn't resonate with them, so they're a little uncomfortable trying to play the character for whatever reason, not appropriateness or anything like that. But how do you guys deal with that at cons as GMs at the table?
Well, I always pack a baseball bat. No, I'm just kidding. No, I have backup characters in case somebody doesn't like it as they're playing it. Like I've had people try out stuff like the psychics and magic users and stuff, but then they haven't played a lot of games in general or even old school games at all. And so they're like, hey, this is a bit much. I'm like, here, you want to swap out for a fighting man? Just get right into it. And I know that they're cool, but I get it. We're at a con game. You don't have time to read the rules. But then for shyness, generally I have callers at my convention games.
Like make your players wear collars?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's exactly
goes
what
with the
he meant.
baseball bat thing.
Don't leave the chairs. Yeah.
You
Somebody's
missed
shy,
the
they
whole
have to be
belt thing
leashed.
before the stream started. So no, when we're there, I have a caller, or I pick somebody at the table to be a caller if somebody really wants to, and then that way I try and limit the amount of blurting out, which usually rolls over the quiet person at the table. Is if somebody's everybody's out there blurting things out, or if I notice that they're trying to get attention but can't, I will intentionally point at them what are you doing? What are you doing? But sometimes you also get the shy person that he kind of doesn't want to say anything. He just wanted to see the system. Sometimes I'll just let them hang back because that's maybe all they wanted to do.
Okay, that's fair.
I simply enforce turn order.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I call on you when it's your turn. What are you doing? Is your character saying anything? That by itself, especially if the person is hesitant because they don't understand the rules, I'm then able to give them some suggestions based on, well, what are you playing? What is this character good at? But often it's just enforcing turn order and going through a couple of rounds like that. And most shy players will get drawn in because they'll go, okay, I see when I'm supposed to be ready to do something. And now I've seen a couple examples of things I can do. And and that tends to work itself out after a couple of rounds around the table.
Yeah, I'll try and make suggestions to a player, especially if they're if they're shy or whatever, and it gets to their turn, maybe they'll, you could see it when they pick their head up and they look around and they're like, oh no, everybody's watching type of thing, and I mean, I always try and say, hey, well, your character has this spell that might be useful or something, or hey, or, your guy's got a gun if you wanted to, or whatever, something, something that would make sense in the scene or whatever that they can do. Right. And then sometimes, they'll take to it or they'll go, yeah, I'll do that or what, because people take different things, differently. I mean, some people will be like, oh, okay. And they'll get used to it. Or, other times people are just, I don't know. Some people are more social and, than others, and then it's hard, right. In a convention game, cause you have such a diverse group usually, and they're not all, like they don't all see each other every week at the same table. You know, it's just
Right.
a bunch of random people, so it's harder to act in character in front of people you don't know. But
I think
Yeah, I had a woman at CNY Con in my night shift game who she chose the character that is based on Bo from Lost Girl, who is a succubus. The character is a succubus. And she thought it looked cool, like it was a badass female succubus character, you know, the soul drain thing. And then as the game went on, it became very clear that she was really uncomfortable using the succubus's main
Yeah.
soul drain power, you know. And she found other ways to make the character useful and have fun with it, but it started to become obvious to me, anyways, that was going on, and I just wanted to hear what your guys' experience with that was. What I did was I let her veer into other skills and other abilities that the character had. You know, obviously, you're not going to force a player to do something that isn't resonating with them on a character, but I was just interested to hear what you guys and your experiences had.
Yeah, I've had less shy people at my con games than I've had on our B&B Game of Games server, because we get some of those. You'll notice a lot of online players can be quite shy sometimes, and you know, it might be because that's what drove them to play online more. But usually, just like Todd said, calling on them in moments, trying to get them to talk. I will only push to a certain degree, because like I said, if somebody really doesn't want to interact that much, then I won't try honing it. But if I had the situation like what you had and somebody wasn't super, it sounded like she managed, like you said, to make it quite fun on her own.
She did, yeah.
That's a good
Which
player,
is why I just kind of let it ride. Yeah.
Right. But if she had not had fun, or you could tell, like, at that point, I probably would have been like, "Hey, you want to swap? Swap out for one of these other ones or something." Usually, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say, because usually those characters don't last super long at my table. But
which actually brings up another
20
question.
minutes and you'll get a new one. Yeah.
Which actually brings up another question. In a situation where this comes up, where you decide that this player's critically uncomfortable playing the character that they're playing, do you immediately ask them if they want to change characters at the table, or do you wait until you take the inevitable 5-minute bathroom break and everybody to pull them aside and say, hey,
I think that's a better.
I think
that's a better time to do it.
Yeah,
because then you're not calling the person out in front of everybody.
You can also, if you find like a natural pause, or if they're sort of walking through somewhere after maybe about 30 minutes to an hour, once you know that they've done some things with that character and you know that they're not like it, you could make a table announce of like, hey guys, just saying, if y'all haven't played this game before, if anybody does want to like swap characters or anything or try out something different, I've got some other pre-mades.
That's a great idea.
We could do that.
Because that just throws it out to everybody and gives them a chance to go, I'd like to try something a little different.
Yeah. At that point, they're like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, because even if you ask that person specifically at the break, everybody comes back and then suddenly they're playing a different character, and it's still kind of calling them out in a way. Whereas if you just throw it out to the whole table, hey, you guys want to switch up characters?
Yeah.
We still have a couple left over.
Now that you've brought that up, I might actually, next time I go to a convention, say before the game even starts that about an hour in, I'll be asking if somebody wants to swap characters in here. Like, go ahead and preemptively just say it and then see how it goes from there. Like, I will allow you guys to do that. Just let me know at about an hour mark or something.
Yeah.
But
now all of our old school fans now on here are about to accuse us all of turning to safety tools.
Well, I don't usually.
Also, they might want to try a different class or something, and they've only got 3 hours.
Yeah, in a convention game, I won't usually have people swap characters. If they get a character killed, I may have them take over as an NPC to be able to continue playing and not just like be unable to play at this event they've signed up for. Right. But then again, maybe not. It kind of depends on the scenario if there would be NPCs available. But for a longer game where they're playing in more than one session, then I would certainly have the option for them to swap out characters. partly because I try to make it really clear what you're signing up for at a convention. And also because we deliberately bring extra characters to pick from. And really that's on you. If you had multiple options and you picked that, I don't know your feelings on a succubi or on a vampire, or if I'm running a horror game and you pick that, and I gave you other options, there's not a lot of time at the table if you've got a 2 or 3 hour game.
Yeah,
I've never. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was just saying I've never dealt with somebody being uncomfortable about the subject matter of a class. I have had people not liking what class they were playing. Like what they really wanted to do was beat somebody with a sword, and they picked a cleric or something.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So
I just, in this case, this is the only time I've really had that happen. And in this case, it wasn't like she was like deeply uncomfortable, with the situation. It became very clear that once she got into playing, she felt weird about using the succubus power, the soul drain power at the table.
Yeah.
And again, she found other ways to make the game fun and to enjoy playing the character. But
now,
just a scenario that happened to me that's never happened to that extent before, and I thought I would see if you guys had experienced anything similar in what you guys did. So,
yeah,
because nobody wants to have a player at their table that's uncomfortable.
Yeah. Greg's got a similar question. Players,
no, got a tricky question.
like players are often extremely uncomfortable with random acts of violence against civilians. How can I convince them to play their character more fully, use all their powers to take over? Well, I mean, if that's the kind of game you're going to run, then I mean, obviously, you got to reward what you want the players to do, right? Like if you want the players to go down in the dungeon and get the gold, then give them XP for getting gold. If you want violence against civilians, then give them extra XP for committing violence against civilians.
But I think you're actually dealing with a with a relatively moral group of players, which is an excellent problem to have.
Yeah.
Maybe don't try to derail that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you must derail it, what I would do is pit them against each other. Have them play villains fighting the other player characters, or fighting the other players when they're playing civilians. Players are absolutely brutal to each other if you give them the chance to run villains.
My best friend has a story that he tells from before we knew each other, but a gaming story where the players, the GM was very clear going in that this is a heroic game. Everybody's playing heroic characters, no evil alignments allowed. You're heroes. So the players played the game, and they started belly aching and grumbling that they wanted to play evil characters. Why can't we play evil characters? Why are you forcing us to play good guys all the time? We want to do something bad, blah, 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 blah. So finally they came to gaming one day, and the GM said, I want you guys to get this out of your system. So we're going to have a week where you all play evil characters. To save time, I've made pre-gen characters. You guys can pick what you want. We're going to have one session where your characters are all chaotic evil, and you're going to do whatever you want to do. So the players went in, and they went into this town, and they raped and pillaged and burned and killed and murdered and, kidnapped and the whole 9 yards. Everything you can think of that evil characters would do, they reveled in it, burned the freaking town to the ground. So he's like, has everybody got it out of their system? Good. Next week, we're getting back to our regular game. So next week starts, the players come back with their regular characters, and they get back to their home base to find out that the last week, a bunch of evil murdering bastards came in and raped and pillaged and murdered and burned out their town.
That's funny. No,
That's what you get.
So in my home games, y'all know how I run it. Like all the evil characters are people's characters. So everybody is somebody else's villain in my campaign. So like one of the player characters in my campaign is a magic user, and he's been playing for such a long time. I think he's like 11th level or something. He's been playing for a very long time. He was actually one of the guys that was play testing B&B. when I was trying to write the rules together. But anyway, he's like, oh yeah, I'm just doing this research. Oh, I've gotten into this whole necromancy thing that's going on. That's illegal. He's just, in his mind, he's like, I'm just doing stuff as my player character. And then these other players are messaging me and they're like, dude, we just saw like this evil necromancer across the map. Like there's armies of skeletons outside his castle. Like, well, what is going on here? We're going to have to stop him. And then one guy's like getting a witch hunters guild together. And this whole time the other player's like, I made another skeleton, guys. You know, but they don't even know. They're just hearing these rumors about this necromancer growing in the East. And he's just like, I leveled up. But so that's how a lot of our gaming goes.
My wife used to play in my Buffy game. Her character used to be a necromancer. She was not evil, but she was a necromancer. And she used to joke all the time when people would come to her house. This is Sven. He's my zombie butler. Don't mind the smell.
There you go. I have in B&B, I use a specific kind of necromancy. It's all like ritual and component based, and they have to do these grand things like sacrifice this many under this kind of moon with these kind of material basins and underneath them, all these other weird things. But there's always these crazy stipulations in there. Is like, you're going to do this thing and raise an army of skeletons, but now your body's going to wither and you can no longer stand sunlight, or you're going to, your soul can never go to heaven in the campaign world or whatever. Like you're trapped. You have no redemption after this or something like that. And there are certain times where players like jump on it and they're like, that's cool, whatever. I'll be like this lich looking thing. And then other times where players like, ooh, I have to pay something. I have to give something up for that. These have some sort of consequences in here. So on the topic of conventions though, and also on the topic of people being uncomfortable at games, do you guys scope your tables out before you start running to know what kind of things you're going to say and not say at a session? Because I know that people know what they've signed up for, but I have had times, not necessarily at a convention, but times where I've ran an online game and I put in the description that there were like some horror themes in the dungeon that I was running, some body horror stuff because it was Lovecraftian inspired, and also themes of like whatever. But when you get somebody at a table, like let's say you have your game and you didn't put it as 18 plus, but you know that a bunch of people are going to die, and then like a 17 or 16-year-old shows up. What do you do?
So I don't resort to safety tools. I personally think safety tools are stupid. I think everybody at your table is an adult or old enough to play a role-playing game. They're old enough to behave like a grown-up.
But kids might show up to a con game. That
said, there are things I am much more careful in con games about the way I approach the things I say, the things I offer in the story, the things I do than I am at home. At home, I've been playing with the same players for 30 years. So I can get away with just about anything because we all are good friends. We all know each other. We all know it's a game. In a con game, I'm more careful. There are things that there are lines that I'm not going to cross. There are story beats that I'm not going to touch at a convention game. And I don't think that is bad or wrong, or like there's a visceral reaction when you say things like that among the old school community. But really, it's just common respect for the people sitting around you. I don't know these people, so I'm going to be a little more careful with how I deal with them. Yeah. Because again, I want everybody to have a good time. I don't want somebody to walk away from the table going, ugh.
Well, then that it's also just thinking about how are you going to behave in public versus how might you behave in private with a group of close friends.
Right.
A convention's a public space. People are paying to be there, but they could be any random person from any walk of life.
Right.
You could have a police officer at your table sitting next to a retired grandmother, sitting next to a 12-year-old boy. Like, you don't know. You should be prepared to be generally in public with whatever you're doing at a convention.
Right. And to address the point of like what happens if you intended to run an adult game and you didn't list it in an adult game and a kid shows up, you're going to have to adjust. as the GM, you're going to have to adjust to the fact that you have a kid there, and you're going to have to put kid gloves on at some point in time. Now, that said, I've sat at a table at a convention. The first time I ever played Hackmaster was the year it came out. I want to say it was at Origins, not Gen Con. It was either at Origins or Gen Con. And they were previewing the game. The player's handbook had just come out. We all sat down at the table, and the youngest player at the table was like this 12-year-old kid. Now, keep in mind, the book, if you've seen the Hackmaster Player's Handbook, it's like 400 pages long. At least it was when it first came out. I don't know what it looks like now. But,
New one's coming.
Pardon?
New one's coming.
Is it? So
yeah, they're doing a
this
reprint
kid,
or whatever.
This
soon, yeah.
kid, in 24 hours since it came out, had read the entire Hackmaster Player's Handbook from cover to cover, right? So, again, 12-year-old kid. We're playing. He's doing shit like pissing on the bodies of the corpses and, this whole night. And he knows exactly where the rule references in the book. It's like, I should get honor for pissing on my foe's corpse. So, again, read the room. This kid could handle this shit, But again, you need to adapt. You need to adapt to your audience, and you need, as a GM, especially at a convention, one of the biggest skills you need has to be the skill to read the room. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yeah, I see that being important in most games, but for more of the, be politeness towards people kind of thing. Because I don't, like, for example, cursing. I don't curse that much, but I do curse at home. But if I'm at a con game, I'm not cursing during a con game. Even if the table's full of old guys and they're cursing, it's like there's just a different way I'm running this thing here because I'm also in public. But if I do have, like, let's say the kid shows up and he's doing exactly that. He's pissing on corpses and he's going and cutting things down. Cool, you do that. But I'm not going to be the one who's presenting that to you at a con game. We have like in my home game that I'd run at the local game store, the game store owner's grandson comes and plays at our table, and so he's younger. But it's very funny because I will tone police a little bit, and then his dad will be like, "Well, that's effing cruel. Kill him," or like just cut off his head, son. And it's like, okay, but yeah.
I think a lot of it depends on, like, I mean, okay, so it's like Chubby mentions that his 15-year-old son's 5 times more comfortable in extreme horror than he is, right? And like my daughter's 13, like, and she, like, Matt Elias was running a Delta Green game, right? And so my daughter and a couple of her friends like wanted in, and I asked him, I said, Matt, look, I know you got it listed as 18 plus, and he's like, it's 18 plus because because it's Delta Green, and there's, like, you're going around, you might shoot, the little nice old lady in the head, you know what I mean, or whatever. Like, there's
right.
There's a certain amount of stuff there, and I'm like, yeah, they're fine with that, like, whatever, you know what I mean. And he was like, yeah, bring him in, whatever, and they had a good time and all that. But there is a line, like, somewhere, I think, where if you advertise your game and you say, okay, this is 18 plus, and, like, a 12, 13, even 15-year-old, right, that can't handle that, that's more like a little kid, you know what I mean, type of mentality or whatever. Like, I don't know, at that point, I think you really got to say, hey, I don't know if this is the right game for you, or you got to ask the rest of the table, hey, are you guys okay if we tone this down a little bit, or like the lines and veils thing, or what I mean, or whatever, where you say, okay, we're going to talk about some gruesome stuff, but maybe we'll just, hey, this body was mutilated, right? Instead of going into a whole, full description of where every organ is lying, you know what I mean?
Right. But I think that's a difference too. Like, we're talking about, like, you're talking about a situation where you advertised that your game was 18 plus, and somebody who's not 18 shows up at the table. Yeah, that's a whole different scenario. That's absolutely where you go. This game was clearly advertised as 18 plus. If the kid is not with an adult, I think you're within your right to tell the kid this game's not for you. If the kid is with an adult,
Yeah.
you turn to the adult and you say, hey, this game was advertised as 18 plus. Are they going to be okay with the type of stuff that they might encounter in this game? But again, if you didn't, if you forgot to say this is an 18 plus game, even though you planned it to be, and a kid shows up, that's a different scenario. And that's a scenario where I think you as the GM have to roll it back a little bit.
We at CNY, the same game that I'm talking about, one of my daughter's friends, their mother was there, and she was dropping her off, and she said she wanted to play this game. So she told her mother. Well, her mother comes up to me, and we had the all the tickets laid out on the table, of the games that were available, and she comes up to me and shows me, like, on the phone. She's asking me. She goes, there's this game here, and it says that it involves possession. Is that about drugs? And I go, no. I go, hang on, what game? So I, like, scroll up and I look, and it's the Delta Green game, and I go, no. I said, that possession is, I go, do you know who Cthulhu is? Or do you know what Cthulhu is? And she goes, no, what is that? And I go, horrible tentacle monster thing that gets into your head and controls you, like possesses your brain and controls you. And she goes, oh, well, so long as it's not drugs, that's fine. Like, like I'm like, tentacles getting into your head and, like, controlling you, and oh yeah, no, that's fine, like that.
Well, and you got to remember that at least for the start of the hobby, most of the players you were dealing with were teenagers, college students, and, like, their professors.
Right.
This was not a this was a younger demographic initially.
Yeah. It's only an old man hobby because we all.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the early days of D&D, like, you had Gary and Dave, who were, I want to say, like, in their 20s when they started D&D, maybe 20s, 30s.
Yeah.
But you also had Mike Mornard, who was a teenager at the time. I think, I could be wrong, but I think I remember him saying he was like 13 or something like that when he met those guys. So, yeah, I mean, you had a demographic that skewed a little bit younger, but there was still a wide range of ages involved there.
And the adventures that they were running, though, what I was getting at was were acceptable for all the different ages who were playing.
Yeah.
And so, there's some stuff that I wouldn't run at a home game either. Why? Because we're playing a game, not making pornography. So, like, that won't be in the game. If you start going that direction, I'll be like, and we're fading to black.
Depends on the game. Depends on the game.
But again, that just comes down to what you and your players and your table are comfortable with.
Yeah.
But think about this as it relates to convention play.
Right.
I think you'd do the exact same thing.
Yeah.
You'd be like, regardless of your age group, especially with the kinds of games you're writing. Your games, from what I can tell, are not about that kind of topic.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct. I forget what I was going to say. Oh, I think also there's, like, I saw somebody over here say, I wouldn't make any exceptions, 18 plus. There it is.
Yeah. I'm curious,
I wouldn't make any exceptions, 18 plus on. That's a valid stance, 100% valid stance.
Yeah, but
however, you also have to stop and think. For a couple of us here, we're trying to sell games as well. So every person I kick out of my table and refuse to make an exception for, that's one person that is absolutely never going to look at my game.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of a different sort of approach, I think, when you're a designer trying to sell your game than there is if you're like Roger, you're just going to run games at conventions.
Yeah.
I think it's much easier if you're just running a D&D game at a convention to say, no, this is an adult game. You can't play.
Yeah, right. Because they're not going to go and say, oh, don't buy anything from that guy. He booted me out of his game.
Right.
When I was, but there's a thing too, like if you say 18 plus, like there's a difference between, physical age and mental age, right? Like, I mean, like I know, like my daughter, like 13, so maybe in an 18 plus game, that's a little, like I knew the GM and and talked to him first, but but I mean, when she's like 15, 16, like I think she could totally handle an 18 plus game. Whereas I know some people that are in their 20s, that are still, 12 years old, you know what I mean?
Immature.
Like,
yeah.
they're just, they're immature. So, I mean, I think there's, there's a line there, I think that, where you gotta kind of be careful with that, and you can kind of decide based on that.
I had a player in one of my home games. There is a concept in the Unisystem games of being tainted, where evil magic is tainted energy, and it's referred to as taint. She couldn't handle it. Every time I said taint, she giggled like a 12-year-old boy, and we had to actually change the name of the energy to corruption instead of it, because she couldn't function at the table.
Just watching Matt's face when you said the word taint, I think that we're on the same, that we would have the same problem.
Yeah, I remember one time in high school whenever I accidentally named a town on our home map. It was like Peneston or something, but totally didn't look at it. It was spelled Penistown on the map. And that town was infamous through my entire high school career. They were like, "Oh, we're gonna go back to Penistown, or are we gonna?"
You know what, the Unisystem games get even worse, because after you step out of witchcraft, where it's taint, in Conspiracy X, it's called seepage. So I don't know
God,
where.
Yeah.
Like,
so, well, see, a lot of my
we just settled on corruption and left it at that.
Yeah.
Well, so like a lot of what I would consider 18 plus stuff in my game would be more pertaining to like moral choices, or if there's some evil entity, they're going to be quite evil, and like the rumors about them are like, the eater of children or something, and like those sort of terms, like but mostly I don't bring those kind of things to a con game either. I remember one of the big happenings in our campaigns when it was the demon Malak was causing issues, and he was gaining some worshippers in the world and stuff. And if anybody knows who Malak is, you could see where these horrible things would be happening that the players are usually fighting against. But I probably wouldn't even if it was a con game that I knew that it was all adults, I probably wouldn't even bring it with me to that. Because
something funny I did relating to that. This was probably 15 years ago or so. I ran a D&D campaign where I just borrowed a bunch of Canaanite deities as the cults, took their actual practices and was portraying them. And I was running a game for a group of agnostics and atheists, all from the US. It was hilarious. They decided everyone involved needed to die and proceeded to genocide them. They were like, nah.
Which is kind of what the Israelites did anyways. So
it was after Todd's game that I realized that Sodom and Gomorrah were good things. No, I'm just kidding. But but I mean, like a lot of the moral stuff I leave at home anyway, because I'm running the dungeons and stuff there. So I'm just like, there's some evil entity down there. And then as far as like gore goes, I don't lay into it as heavy as somebody that's running Delta Green might lay into it. But stuff like there's arterial spray flowing out of his neck, and cut his head to the floor or something. I have had people that weren't okay with that in a game too.
Really interesting.
Yeah, I've had that.
And maybe I should, but I usually don't back off of gore descriptions. I mean, when somebody scores a critical hit and kills a bad guy, you cleave his skull in twain and gray matter flies. And because I find that players at my table love that shit, like absolutely dig it. And I haven't had any young players have issues with it. Sexual things are really what tend to and like Todd said, there's a point where you go fade to black, but there are also elements that you just can avoid at con. Don't touch with a with a 10-meter cattle prod.
You say that, but I played. I think it was at page 2. I played in an AD&D game that was it was very sexualized. The guy was running his own module. It's like Feast of the Gobblecocker or something, and it was like
Sounds
That
And you
was-
signed up for this game?
I signed up for it because it was an AD&D game and it sounded fun. Yeah, and
Oh god, we
Um,
signed up for a game. This was years ago, many years ago at Origins. There was a Cthulhu group, and I'm not going to name the group because I don't know if they still are around. But they used to go to cons, and they were a very organized group that focused on Call of Cthulhu games. And we wanted to run or play in a really cool Call of Cthulhu game. We figured these guys are well known. They they have their thing, so we signed up for it. Now this was when Julie and I were still dating. We weren't married yet. We got to the table, sat around, and this keeper proceeded to verbally, I'm just going to say harass Julie for 3 hours in gruesome
Wow.
detail and tell the rest of us that our characters were bound and couldn't do anything but sit there and watch. Well, he clearly got off on describing these horrible, horrible things. And after the game was over, everybody at the table went and complained. Everybody at the table went and said, "This is like, there's appropriate, there's inappropriate, and there's beyond the pale," which is where this guy went. And we found out that like pretty much everyone that had played in one of their games that weekend had similar complaints, and the entire group was banned from Origins for it.
wow.
They actually, in their minds, thought, that they were being victimized because this is what Call of Cthulhu is, and you should, which it's not, because H.P. Lovecraft was like asexual, so there's not really graphic sex in any Lovecraftian stories at all, but they had it in their heads that tentacle rape is what.
Wow.
That's terrible. As far as like,
Yeah.
you're thinking about, we're doing this in public, and the one that you described briefly, Roger, also wasn't good. Less awful, it sounds like, but not good.
Yeah.
As far as a thing to be doing in a public event with random people that you don't know. Like,
The module was pretty good. I
Mhm.
mean, other than like that stuff. Like if you, I actually posted a link in the private chat to the to the module, but the module, like without the sex parties stuff that goes on, like it's not a bad module. Like it's I guess well written. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to give it too much credit, but also, I mean, it was decent.
So you don't
once
want to
got
trash
past
on it because it
the
was
stuff. Yeah.
now, one thing
but-
that I
Yeah.
forgot to mention and probably should have put a link to, but I didn't think about it. I'm not going to be at Gen Con, but we do have products being sold there.
Cool.
So I wanted to encourage anyone listening, if you're going to Gen Con, swing by booth 2904, Pointy Hat Games. And ideally, if you see Patrick and Drew at that booth, greet them in an inappropriate manner. That is still okay in public.
This is
So-
okay in public.
Be creative.
My stuff
Oh, boy.
should theoretically be there at the Studio 2 booth somewhere. So I assume Studio 2 is at Gen Con. They almost always are. So look for my Elflair Games stuff there.
And just think about my stuff while you're there, because it's not.
I have a question. I actually have another question to throw out, and this should be a fun one. Leaving wildly inappropriate line crossing shit aside, what's the worst experience you've had as a GM or a player at a con game? Because I got a doozy on this one.
Yeah. Oh, I think for me, without getting too specific, because I don't want to call people out that might be watching and remember the game, but there was a lot of argument over starting equipment that I just rolled randomly and tossed on a sheet. And I said at the beginning of the game, I was like, if y'all want something more than this, you each have a little bit of silver, but these are all just random things. Nope, we're all good. And then halfway through the game, well, it's just stupid. I have a sling and arrows. I'm like, I told you I rolled them randomly and I gave you money. Like
Yeah.
you could have done something, like sitting there complaining to
Then
me.
I guess you need to kill a goblin and take its sword, don't you?
Yeah, like I'm just like, dude, if I mean, it was after that too that I started hand picking all the pre-made items and everything, I'm like, no, nobody's gonna wind up with a sling and an arrow. But still, it's like, and it wasn't even one of my scheduled games. It was like a pickup
See,
game.
what you should have done was say it's not a sling and an arrow, and it's an atlatl.
Yeah, yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Dude, if the player had asked me if he could fling the arrow like that, I would have just let him at that point at a con game. That's another thing at a con game is that a lot of times there are things that I would just be like, we could get really deep into this, but sure, go ahead, kind of stuff.
Right.
But
I played in a game with Jeff D, and he said the word atlatl about 68 times during the thing.
So, what about you guys? What's the worst experience you've had as a player or a GM?
I got one. If you want to think about it a little more, Todd, or
Yeah, go for it.
you get something. So, I don't know. This is just maybe like a bad experience. Like it wasn't anything that was like too like crazy.
he was playing in
and maybe
Dracula in
it's just-
space.
It was just me. No, I mean that was awesome. Like that, you know what I mean? That was awesome. No, I was at a convention, and it was a thing we were talking about before, where like this kid signed up to play the game, and like the father kind of came over and not really forced it, but was like, "Oh, hey, I signed my kid up for the game. He's like 12. I know it says 18, whatever. Is that okay or whatever?" And like nobody wanted to say no, And it was I believe it was a Castles and Crusades game. But it wasn't like the trolls weren't running or anything. There was just somebody,
Right.
somebody else. But I don't want to make it sound like this is a slight against CNC or whatever. But and this kid had this he had this 3D printed skull, and it wasn't a dice tower. Okay, but it had like a hole in the top of the head, and it's holes in the eyes and like the mouth and stuff. And every time the kid would go to roll his dice, he would like pick them up like from the table, and he'd like drop his D20 inside the skull, and he'd like shake it and then like dump the die out. But like he would shake it for way too long, and the die would fall out would like fall out of the eye while he's shaking it, like land on the floor, and he'd have to like pick it up. And it was just like, and then instead of just like rolling it, he would put it back in the skull and like shake it again. And it's like, and like, it just made the game drag. And it was like, dude, can you just roll the dice? Like, and people asked him nicely, like, hey, can you just like roll the dice on the table, And he was like, yeah, sure, okay. And he'd like roll the dice, and then like next time he'd like have drop his dice in there, and he'd like shake it up, and they drop on the floor again, and it was just like I wanted to. I almost left the game. I almost was like, I'm sorry, I can't do it. And that really was. Not that it was horrible, but it, a thing for me, even when I'm running a home game, is like turns that take way too long. And like, if somebody's got to be like, oh, I got to look up spells, or I got to do this, or let me find this book, or let me like do this, I'm like, okay, yep, next. You know what I mean? But like when it's not my game and I don't have that control, and I can't just, like you got to let the GM kind of, do it. And it's just, it's difficult for me to like sit there and like, cause I feel like my time's being wasted,
Right.
right. And I don't know, like, I don't know if that's the fault of the GM. Yeah. And I know it's hard for a GM to say, hey, you know what I mean? To like scold somebody, especially if it's a kid or whatever, like, you want to like yell at somebody else's kid, but also it's like, slowing your game down or whatever. But so I don't know what a good solution to that is,
So I guess, I've one a bad experience as well, but I guess for that specific thing, if it was a one-time thing, like a convention game, like you were saying,
yeah,
I would do the same thing that I would do if I suspect someone is cheating. I would roll for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that being said, the probably the worst convention game I had for an RPG was a game where they were trying to do card-based randomization instead of dice-based.
Okay.
And the clunkiness of the mechanics, as well as all the characters you were played in this had skills, but it was basically like they were designing a bunch of separate games with similar rules for each different scenario. So you had special rules for this scenario, and then if you're going to play a different scenario, even of the same game, it had slightly different rules, and that it was very not difficult to understand, but it was very slow to play. And the same is true for like it was definitely too railroady in that you had characters who had skills that could apply to the adventure, but then the adventure wouldn't allow you to use them. Like somebody who's a hacker and you're trying to get through an electronic lock on a space station, but you weren't allowed to in this adventure.
Right.
Like it's, yeah. So that was probably my worst.
My worst was a Shadowrun game. Again, this was at Origins, and this was many years ago. Julie and I were still just dating. Julie had never. We signed up for this game, the Shadowrun game. Julie had never played Shadowrun. So before the con, my friend Mike, who is an ace Shadowrun GM, ran us through a little scenario so she could get a feel for making a character and how the game worked, so she wouldn't feel completely out of place. Right. So we played a game, and it was all good. So we get to the con. We're sitting there, and the GM, it's an 8:00 in the morning game. We're sitting there, and the GM doesn't show up. And it's me and Julie, and I specifically remember this one other woman sitting across from me because me and her were the only two at the table that were experienced Shadowrun players, okay? And I was working for Eden Studios at the time, which will come in a minute. And a couple other people. So there's like 6 of us at the table. So the GM doesn't show up. We're waiting. 10 minutes passed. 15 minutes passed. And I say to everybody, okay, it doesn't seem like he's going to show up. If you guys don't want to waste your time, I'm here with Eden Studios, and I have my All Flesh Must Be Eaten stuff. I can run an AFMVE game for us if we want. And everybody's like, yeah, it sounds fun, but, maybe we're just going to go report that he didn't show up. And, okay, cool. You signed up for Shadowrun, not a zombie game. That's fine. Just then, this thing walks in through the door and stumbles more than walks through the door, and it, and I'm going to keep referring to it as it because it was subhuman, walked in and had fluids running out of every orifice on his body, staggered in, oh my God, plopped down, and immediately starts ranting about how it's all the hotel's fault because they didn't give him his wake-up call.
Oh boy.
Okay? Never mind the fact that in this day and age, at that point in time, every hotel room had an alarm clock in the room. But it was the hotels blah 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 blah. So he goes, whatever. Does everybody have their characters ready? And we went, your thing said that materials and characters were provided. And he went, yeah, that means you provide the characters and materials. And we're like, no, sir, that means at all.
Oh, God.
But fortunately, Julie and I had our characters tucked in the back of my book from the game that we ran with my friend. So she pulled that out. The woman across the table whipped up a character from the archetypes in the book, showed the other guys how to do that. We had characters, right? The guy goes, I guess you don't have minis either. And we went,
wow.
Nobody plays Shadowrun with minis. That sends him into another rant about how if you're not playing Shadowrun with miniatures, you're playing it wrong. And there's only one right way to play Shadowrun, and that's with miniatures. There's literally no miniatures rules in Shadowrun anywhere. So he pulls out some random D&D minis and slaps them on the table and says, this is you, and this is you, and this is you. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so fine. Finally, at about an hour in, he starts running the game. And at this point in time, we're determined to give him trouble. Everybody at the table is determined to give this guy trouble. But we're doing it in such a way that we're playing our characters. Like, we're not, So, for example, he says that we are being hired to retrieve a MacGuffin that is about the size of 4D6. And my character goes, what's 4D6? You know what 4D6 is. Like my character has never heard the term 4D6. This is Shadowrun. So we redirect him to say it's the size of a box of cigarettes. Okay, fine. And then he goes, and this is, I completely admit by this point in time I am being an asshole at this table because this guy has pissed me off so bad. So he goes, but as you go, beware, because this thing you're after is being guarded by the biggest, baddest, toughest Shadowrunner ever to walk the sixth world. I swear to God, he said that. And I went, my character puts his feet up on the table and goes, but how can that be? I'm the biggest, toughest, baddest Shadowrunner ever to walk the sixth world. And he lost his mind on me at this point over this, right? So then we get into the adventure. And from that point on, me and this other woman that knew how to play Shadowrun, we exchanged a glance, and it was like we had a whole conversation in 2 seconds, silently. From then on, every spell that was cast at deadly force, and we automatically made the drain. Like we just we just wanted to get through it, and we completely gamed the system the whole way just to get through it. And then we all went and complained about the guy. But that was hands down, aside from that Call of Cthulhu game, the worst con experience I've ever had at a game. Yeah.
Wow. I mean, yeah. Wow. That sounds like, the GM, the hotel screwed him over, shows up. His players are completely unprepared.
Yeah,
I-
Jace, what are you talking about? We're completely on this guy's side
here. This guy was hungover or sick or what, but he was just leaking.
Oh, con crud.
Drooling
Crud,
and
man, it
mucus.
sucks.
It was foul. Absolutely.
Hotel.
And like,
Didn't get
that's
up in
another
time
thing.
to take his
Con
medication,
As if you're playing at a con game, running or playing, put on some deodorant and take a freaking shower in the morning, please.
Yeah.
I can't argue with that one. Jason, somewhere off in the world right now, this guy is over here. He's like, my worst con game. This asshole kept going all over. He said, I didn't have any sleep.
Yeah.
I didn't want to, I didn't have my medicine in the morning. These guys
The
are just
hotel
rude
wake
the
him up,
entire
right.
time. I
I
lost my
specifically-
miniatures and was embarrassed about it, and I
specifically
lost
told the
my
players-
character sheet.
yeah.
Yeah, he's like, I made
Specifically
pre-mades,
told the
but I didn't
players
wanna
to
act
have
like it was my fault.
There's two
Everything.
sides to every story, and somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
is the truth. Yes.
Right.
Oh man.
But I at least admit, like at some point, I decided I was done with this, and I was being an asshole at that table. Because I was so done with him.
We had
And it wasn't just me. Like the other players were getting a
Yeah,
kick out of it, and they were being assholes too. I just remember what I did specifically. So,
Dude, Chubby brought up people eating at his table in the
Yeah.
comments. And
Yeah.
so one of our open table games I ran, he's probably gonna see this at some point. Oh well, I'm calling you out, bud. One of my friends, he's notorious for like spilling drinks at tables and stuff.
oh my god.
And I remember one time his glass spilled and it cut his character sheet just completely soaked or whatever. And he's like trying to frantically move things off. And the wet character sheet goes right on top of my Leatherette Hyperborea books.
Oh my god.
And then so like some of the paint of the ink of the lettering on the front cover had come off. And I was like, I'm not about to be like, I told him, no more drinks after that. But I was like, not about to be the guy that was like, my precious books, you ruined my books, So I was just like, it's okay. And I got home and I was just like, I'm gonna have to get another set of books. I don't know if I can keep looking at these. Just a little stuff on the side of it.
Two responses to that. One is that you pay a lot of money for those leather or leatherette covers, so you're justified in being angry.
Yeah.
However, the second one is maybe you don't bring the leatherette books to cons.
That's where it was a mixture of that, and I knew that he was sitting next to me, and I've known him for spilling drinks, and I just left the books there, so I didn't. I was like, oh, it's cool, and then I get home and I'm just like, this is the worst thing ever. But my things, I don't know. I kind of get like, I am iffy about players touching my stuff anyway, like miniatures and stuff. I concede a little bit with whatever miniature I give them for their character, because usually when I do that, I'm like, this is your mini now.
Yeah.
Now that I've done that. But like, I've definitely had some tables where I'm like, no, I'll get it. I'll move it. Don't worry. I got it.
Yeah.
No, you can totally
had-
keep that character sheet and pen that you took.
I just had a Briscoe County Jr. moment. You guys ever watch Briscoe County Jr. when it was on the Bruce Campbell West Weird? If you haven't seen it, you must go see Briscoe County Jr.
Whoa,
It's one of the
okay.
greatest TV series ever put out, and it died before its time. It only ran one season. But there's one of the bad guys is named Pete. I forget what his last name is, but Pete, because there's a whole thing about nobody touches Pete's piece. And every time somebody touches his gun, he loses his mind. Like, nobody touches Pete's piece.
Hey, honestly, that's how I feel. I mean, we're in a hobby full of people that don't like my precious things, my math rocks, my precious books, my everything. You know, that's kind
Yeah,
of the
don't
hobby
curse
we're
my
in,
dice.
too.
Yeah.
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 Oh man.
Nothing, and that is actually where I fall apart. Nothing upsets me more than if I'm sitting at a table at a con, somebody goes, "I need a D6," and they grab mine.
They just grab
Oh,
one. Oh my god,
I hate that.
That is bad etiquette right there.
I hate that.
That is bad table etiquette right there. You know, if you just say, "I need an extra D6," someone will hand you one, but don't just reach over and grab somebody else.
I've had players at my home table lose their mind at one guy that was eating I don't know, I think he was eating like Doritos or something, and he goes like this, sucks his, the stuff off of his fingers, and then goes to grab somebody else's book.
God.
And he's like, he grabs it, just slides it across the table. Like, fuck no.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Oh my god. He
Oh, my
thought, he cleaned them off in his mouth. That was, I don't know if you guys noticed, but on the lunch menu for CNY, there was no chicken wings or anything like that. Like I specifically pulled those off of the, I was like, no, that's going to be a bad situation.
Nothing with
where
sauce. Yeah.
somebody's no finger foods with sauce.
It's already going to be bad enough that
dipping.
people are going to drench their French fries in ketchup.
I was
Right.
living
And like
off of those
dipping and
burgers,
stuff
man.
is okay. But the burgers are good, right?
Those were so.
Don't worry, Roger.
burgers
I
were-
ordered it
yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
food was good. All the food was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I
Except
mean, that was
for-
one of the things I was
even-
worried about.
Even the food that took like 2 hours for me to
Yeah,
get
I
on
know.
Sunday.
I know.
That was tricky.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
They
Sunday,
were
that
nice
was-
about it. They
was
made it
rough.
right, and they were really nice about it. It was all good. I got overlooked. Shit happens. It happens sometimes.
We had a game. I had one more rough experience here. I had a game. It was a Star Trek game. It was the 2D20 Star Trek, and so I was just interested in checking it out. And the GM, we thought it was going to be great because he showed up like dressed as Captain Kirk, and everything. And but he was running it, and he was reading the module for the first time as he was running. He didn't tell us that, but like he was like, "Oh, wait, hang on," and he's like flipping, and then he would just read like the paragraph from the book, and it was like clearly like, I'm reading this, and then he's like, "Okay, yeah, well, okay, let me go back over here," and it was like flipping back and forth, and it was like clearly the first time you ran the module, and that was just that was painful.
We signed up for once again many years ago. I think this was at Gen Con. We signed up for a Deadlands game, and we were in a room where the RPGA was running their Living City. This was second edition era, so it was before third edition D&D. No, it might have been right around third edition because Living City went on through third edition, so it might have been early third edition. But anyways,
yeah.
We're in a room where the RPGA is running their Living City campaign, and we're supposed to play Deadlands. The GM calls in and says he can't make it. He's sick. So they went and got a D&D dungeon master to run Deadlands for us, who had never played Deadlands
Oh boy.
in his life.
Yeah.
And it ended up like, we're like, okay, do you have 2 decks of cards? He was like, you need decks of cards for this? And we're like, oh, Jesus, here we go, right? So my buddy Mike, who is, again, he's the same guy that ran the Shadowrun game for us. He's also a big Deadlands fan. He happened to have a deck of Deadlands cards in his bag. So we had to figure out how to make one deck of cards work. When in Deadlands, you could need multiple decks. You need, at minimum, one for the GM and one for the players for initiative. And then any player that's playing a huckster needs their own deck of cards. It goes on. We managed to make it work with one deck of cards by doing a lot of shuffling and passing the deck back and forth. But it ended up being that it was the most bizarre, and I don't want to say it was bad because it worked, but it was the most bizarre thing ever because this GM ran the adventure, but Mike and I were the ones that were judging the rules. So every time it got to combat, every time it got to a rules issue, every time Mike and I ran the combats, Mike and I ran the,
I mean,
the GM was running,
that's
I
not
guess
terrible.
no, it wasn't bad. It was just really bizarre the way it all ended up playing out. Yeah.
For large games, that's something I'll actually do on purpose. I'll have one person assisting essentially with
we do that too.
The rules.
Yeah.
But we should get things wrapped up here shortly, and I did want to at least briefly recap. So the main differences it sounds like that we've covered for convention games compared to home games are that you're prepared to be public facing, right? That you're wanting to be ready in that regard. That you're doing more prep work than you would for a home game in terms of like notes or materials, and in terms of structure for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And obviously, although we didn't touch on it directly, but the stories kind of did, that you're showing up on time, that you have the materials, that you are in fact ready to host a game. Yeah. And also that the player expectations, you're going to have random people. So some of them are going to behave differently than maybe your people at your normal game, and you should be ready for that. And also that the players are going to be more aggressive with their characters or more risky than you might expect in a home game because of the nature of a convention game being a limited experience.
But also much more willing to go along with the story.
That as well. They'll be willing to bite on clues or hints or direction much quicker than you might find in a home game.
You say, show up on time and like ready to play, like ready to go, right? Whether that's a player or a GM or whatever. But like for me, like I don't even think about those things because that's like the first thing. You know what I mean? Like everything that we're talking about, I think is after that. Like that's the main prerequisite is show up on time and be ready to play, right? Whether you're a GM or a player in any game.
Two of the horror stories related to not.
No, you're right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah.
So let me throw out one last thing then for people to pontificate on. How do you guys feel about running con games versus running home games? I personally, while I always have a good time once the game starts and once we're in it and we're at the table, I absolutely hate running con games. I get so stressed out. I get so miserable leading up to the game. And all I can think of the whole time is I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. It's going to be a mess. It's going to suck.
Yeah.
And it's not just me being down on myself. Part of it is the imposter syndrome, but part of it is I don't know what I'm going to get. I don't know who's going to show up at the table. I don't know what it's going to be like. I just absolutely hate it. And then once it starts, it's always fine. And I always have a good time and I meet great people. But I don't get that at home. At home,
because you know who's going to show up.
I lollygag about starting. We get to a point where we're talking. I'm like, all right, I can't put this off forever. Let's start playing. But it's not the same sort of feeling of stress and anxiety that I get running at a con game. How do you guys feel about running con games as opposed to running home games?
I feel similar, but usually it's just because of like I don't know who's going to show up. Yeah. Like I'm worried that one bad player is going to show up, or one like super annoying player that you're going to have to try and have to reason with like several times during the game. Like, and I hate having to like try and like play the bad guy to to try and tell somebody, hey, listen, this game isn't all about you, or like, hey, you got to stop doing this thing because everybody hates it, or what, you know what I mean, or whatever it is. So that's about all I get nervous about.
My home games, my con games are much closer to my home games, I think, than the rest of y'all. I mean, the more structure is for me. The only difference is politeness in public, and you guys aren't leaving this area. But within that area, I think the only times I would step in is if one player was making it so that they kept going back to the shopkeeper in town and kept wanting to go back there and stuff. Then I'd be like, dude, look, everyone else here at the table is trying to go in the dungeon. But that's also why I have a caller at my home table too, and I also have the same sort of setup, other than you guys can leave the area and do whatever you want. So for me, it feels quite the same. I'm also quite used to having people I don't know show up to my games. Like I do run private games too with just my, my close friends that I see often. But usually they're like, even with them, we still use a caller and stuff like that and run it. So for me, it feels very similar. But I do get the sort of nervousness beforehand, because whenever it's like whenever I'm there at the convention and I know that people have specifically ticked off to sign up for my game, and I'm usually there because I'm also selling something, I get nervous because of that. Because I'm like, man, if I forget one of the rules that I put in the game, like in the moment, that's gonna look terrible, or something like that. Or it's like, or if they get in there and because of the way I set it up, they're TPK'd 5 minutes in, but they've signed up for 3 hours or whatever. Do I roll up new characters for everybody? Do we restart? Like, those sort of things are what I get nervous about. It's more like, am I going to be a good steward of people coming to a table they signed up for?
And I guess if the question was preference, I certainly prefer home games. I don't enjoy running online particularly. I don't enjoy that, but I will. It's something I need to do as a game designer for playtesting with some various people from around the world. It's also something that is good to do with customers. And then when it comes to convention play, I enjoy it, but it's a different experience. And also, I probably enjoy more private conventions, which may not be something that you guys do a lot, but where maybe a group of 20 people will invite me and Nate to come and run games for them for a weekend. That's a better experience, I think, than conventions. Partly because you can often do like a short campaign arc. You could do several interrelated games, and you can also do. You get to know the people better, right? Because you're seeing some of the same faces at different tables.
Right.
So that, yeah. So convention play is fine. It doesn't bother me. I don't spend a lot of time thinking about it other than just like attendance, because you don't know. A convention, there could be no one signed up. There could be a wildly over full table, and you often will not know until you're actually there.
Right.
So that part I don't prefer, but there's nothing really to be done to stop that. People can drop out of a game for whatever reason, and people may have seen the last time you ran a game and decide to physically come over and try to join the next one, whether you wanted them to or not.
Right.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I mean, that part, I there's nothing I can do, so I don't think about it too much. But I'm like, well, see how it goes, which is less of an issue for those other kinds of games.
Yeah. And I will say, I do enjoy having, like, Raj and I have gotten to know each other because he played in my Amazing Adventure Games 2 years in a row at Page. And I always enjoy it when I go to a convention and I recognize players from the last time I was at that convention who have signed up to play
Absolutely
in another game. That's always a lot of fun because then you know exactly what you're getting, and you're like, all right, like the group that Raj came with, and it wasn't all the same people, but your guys were.
No, two of us. Yeah, there were two or three of us. Yeah.
Yeah. And I knew what I was getting. I was like, all right, these guys are going to wake up and choose violence.
Yeah.
And I knew exactly the way the game was going to run, and I knew exactly how we were going to go to have a good time with this game. And that's,
I'm running out of ways. I'm running out of ways to beat people barefisted, though.
Which is why you
have to
started
switch
beating
characters.
giant scorpions.
I had a couple groups of people at North Texas like that, where it was good to see them this year. It was like, oh, I recognize you guys, and you brought friends. Awesome.
Yeah. That's good stuff. So
for those of you who have a good time at a con game, definitely sign up to play with the same GM the next time you're at that con. Even though you already know the game, the GM is going to appreciate seeing you again, and you know you're going to have a good time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I got to run online more often. I got to start. I know Matt's
I
invited
don't.
me to a server to run some Shadow Dark games, and or pretty much whatever, I guess. But maybe I got to start doing that at some point. But
It does get you get used to the way it flows, but I'll always prefer in-person games to
Yeah,
online. But it's necessity.
I absolutely abhor running online. I've done it a couple times, and I had nothing but even though the games went well, I had nothing but a miserable time doing it.
Maybe that's a good comparison to do on another episode. Talk about online versus.
I'm gonna sit there and be miserable and bitter the whole time if we do it.
That's all right. We're used to it.
Gaming online, and I don't begrudge people who love running online, and I acknowledge that it holds an important place in our hobby, but I personally abhor it to a level that I can't even put into words.
All right. Any last thoughts on convention play?
I mean, other than we would love to play with you at conventions, and I think most of us are scheduled or soon to be scheduled to be at conventions over the next months, weeks, what have you.
My next one is Pittsburgh Gaming Expo, and there are still badges available if anybody wants to make a trek to Pittsburgh in early October. It is a super cool convention that started off as a retro video game convention and is now expanding into tabletop. They're kind of still getting their shit together as far as how the convention is being run and organized, so there's some road bumps still, but it's new and growing, and but it's a pretty cool, like, they have a giant dealer-sized room in the convention center that is nothing but a free play vintage video arcade. So
cool.
It's cool. So if anybody wants to make the trip to Pittsburgh, it's the first weekend in October, and I will be there.
December 12th, I'm doing a Central New York game day. It's just gonna be a 1-day thing. No special guests, no vendors, just all day gaming, 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. It's $10. We're going to schedule some games and stuff. That's going to be at gaming all day. It's going to be at the pinball hall, Two Cousins Pinball, the guys that were at CNY that had the 2 pinball tables there. They're going to do it's $25 free play all day. They're going to do $5 off if you're part of the convention group. So $20, you can play pinball on and off all day in between gaming. Otherwise, just to get into play RPGs, $10. It's not bad. I know that's more geared for locals. I know you guys are a little far. Obviously, we'd love to have you guys if you guys want to come up. But links in the in the chat there. But
and I'll be at Arnicon next is my next one. So October. I might be at Page. I wouldn't come to Page because you think I'm going to be there. It's just I might be there, mainly because it's close enough. I looked at it, I was like, I could drive that. And then Dave Con again and CNY Con in that order.
I will be at Page. I
might also try and do North Texas and CNY because my brother lives out towards North Texas ways, so I could theoretically stay with him and then fly over or something, like drive to him, maybe fly to CNY and then come back and then drive home. I don't know. I'll figure all that out when we get a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Also, I didn't know if any of you guys wanted to, before we got off, mention any of y'all's products again for the people that were listening.
I would like to mention the cons that I'll be at.
Oh, well, Todd, I was going to skip you. No, I'm just kidding.
So, in addition to some private events, and if you're in the Great Lakes area and are one of our customers and you're free in late September, send me an email. Love to have you come and game with us. We're having some guys in the Great Lakes area get together, but then also planning to be at Page as our next big public event. And we've got another couple private ones that we're getting scheduled. But yeah, Page, we should have a booth there. And Matt, if you are looking, if you're not currently signed up as a vendor, but you want to be there, let me know, and we might be able to set something up for sharing a booth.
That'd be pretty cool. I think we could. That'd be cool.
I post a link to Arnicon. That's Griff Morgan's convention. He was in the chat there. And Technobabble wants to come to CNY. When tickets are going to be on sale? Probably by the end of August. I'll put it up. I really don't like it when I show up to a convention and before I'm even checked in, they're selling me a badge for next year. So I try and wait till like the 9-month mark instead of selling it a year ahead of time. I don't know. Maybe that loses me some badge sales, but I mean, I don't know. I just don't want to keep hounding on people, but August, some point in August, I will have the site up and I'll be
cool.
I'll post some links to the show. And
I just dropped the link
else.
for the Pittsburgh Gaming Expo in the private chat.
Yeah, I'm gonna copy that.
As far as products go,
there.
As I mentioned earlier, I do have friends selling for us at Gen Con this coming weekend. So if you happen to be there, bug the guys at Pointy Hat Games, please. I would love it if you greeted them by name and horrified them. Drew is there and Patrick is there. Greet them enthusiastically. They're at booth 2904.
Thank you, Matt.
Nice.
Night Shift may well not be there because they're running really low on Night Shift books. I forgot to send them more.
Oh.
They will have 13 parsecs, and they should have 13 parsecs in Wasted Lands, at least.
Good.
So, yeah.
Fantastic. And we're simulcasting on a bunch of channels. So like, share, subscribe to everybody.
All that fun stuff.
Yeah.
Comment. Tell us how much you love us. No, or hate us. I don't know. But products for what I've got going. Still got the sale going for the Game of Games discount code. So I've got the hardbacks, the Barrows of Borderlands box sets, and the supplements out right now. And then sometime within this next month here, the next book is coming out. It was originally going to be mixed into 3 Galoo supplement, but then both of them got too big for one supplement, so I had to split them. And that's going to be the Barrow Mail. So if y'all go to barrowsandborderlands.com, y'all can get yourselves on my mailing list or whatever, and I'll send out emails when it launches and goes live. But that's kind of my Barrow Mail is going to be my Dark Ages Anglo-Saxon game,
Cool.
with inspirations from chainmail and old D&D stuff, and then it's quite fun. I'm running it more like troop style campaigning, so you make like a little troop of guys and campaign with them. But that's what I've got going.
Nice.
Nice.
And links for all these guys' wonderful stuff is in the description down below. So go there and check them out. Buy their products. All that fun stuff. All right. Thanks everybody for coming. Thank you guys for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for as always.
Yeah.
Thanks
for having me. But we'll catch you guys in a couple weeks. Episode to be determined, but we'll definitely be there in a couple weeks.
Yeah, stay tuned. We'll let you guys know what the topic will be.
Yeah. Okay. Take care, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a good one.